Hello, everyone. We want to first welcome our keynote speaker for today, Baltej Singh. We would like to thank you on behalf of Sangat Youth for joining us in our efforts to display Sikh history in Canada. My name is Dhillon, and I'm one of the co-presidents for this initiative.
My name is Dhillon, and I'm the second co-president of Sangat Youth. We're very honored to be interviewing you today. If we could start off with a short introduction from you, that would be great.
Well, first of all, let me thank you both for taking initiative and doing this in this time. I think it's wonderful to be able to take and use technology this way and speak about our Sikhi and Sikh Heritage Month and all of the things that are important to all of us that we would normally be celebrating in the streets during this time. So this is a wonderful venture and very much appreciate your effort. So a little bit about myself. Well, I born and raised in Malaysia. I was 16 when I came to Canada as an immigrant with my family, and that was predicated by my father passing away. And as a result, we made the trip here. My brother was already established, so he helped us settle. And once we got to Canada, I went to high school. I had my challenges in high school, if you will. We can speak about that later. But one of the things that that I do share often is a different Canada back in '83. There were less Sikhs, South Asian community in the Lower Mainland and across Canada. So there was a struggle at the time. Folks were still moving through a difficult time with respect to their identities, racism, discrimination. It was rampant. It was quite challenging, and we too, the community itself was also trying very, desperately to try to fit in. And one of the things that was happening back then was that young men like myself who would come from different countries, Malaysia, India, England, were immediately taken to a barber shop to have their hair and turban removed, just so you could fit in, and you wouldn't be, as big of a target. So clearly I didn't do that, but that was one of those life lessons and life moments and time where it was a crossroad where you had to make a decision. And I'm grateful to the Creator that I made a particular decision that day, because we wouldn't be sitting here talking today otherwise. And went to high school, went to college, went to university, and it was during that time where I was pursuing a career, looking to pursue a career in law, that I started to volunteer with the RCMP in law enforcement, and fell in love with the work, fell in love with the people that were doing it, found a lot of nobility in that work, and consciously made a decision to pursue law enforcement. Well, then the rest I think we're going to talk about later today.
Sure.
Awesome. So you answered our first question, which was what inspired you to volunteer with the RCMP. So thank you. I also just wanted to mention that me and Daman both, we've heard about you for so long. We learned about you in our history textbooks, and you're just such an amazing inspiration to, I know, many of our viewers here today as well.
Thank you. Very kind of you. I certainly didn't set out to be any type of a trailblazer, icon, whatever else terms that are being used. Charter hero. Look at that, me talking about myself. I let that go for a while, huh? No, I didn't set out to do that. I didn't set out to be any of those things. What I wanted to do was just be a good police officer. Just wanted to be a law enforcement officer, and I guess the universe had bigger plans. So.
Yeah. We're very grateful for the journey that you've had and the way that's inspired other people as well.
Thank you. Thank you.
So we read in your bio that you mentioned facing racism soon after you came to Canada, along with the difficulties that you had, including the turban into your uniform. So what other obstacles did you face during those days as an immigrant in your journey to get hired with the RCMP, like other than the turban and your beard?
Sure. I think there was just a general misconception about immigrants at the time here in Canada. And there was a lot of, not that there is not today, but certainly more prevalent back then, unconscious bias that guided some of the decision making. I'll give you a quick example. My first day at high school, I came to the office and presented my papers. Nobody spoke with me. After I gave them my papers, my class assignments and my course assignments were already made prior to me even arriving, prior to any type of assessment. One of the classes that I had to take in grade 11 when I arrived was ESL. And I got to tell you, my English hasn't improved since. It's still the same. So, but because of that unconscious bias, folks there looked at the fact that this was an immigrant and coming from a country potentially that did not teach English. So they made that decision without any assessment and placed me in English as a second language, which I completed in the first 2 or 3 weeks and then became the teacher's aide and so on and so forth. So that type of systematic bias was prevalent at the time. And many of us had to, and if that was then in 1983, you can just imagine what, many of the racialized communities went through prior to that, and not to mention our indigenous communities who we very much recognize have, borne an incredible amount of pain and injury, even though they were the first here. So things have gotten better over the years, but it's still prevalent. It's still present. I had difficulty in school. One of my teachers decided Baltej was too hard to pronounce, so they started calling me Bill in school. That was my name in school. Well, you can imagine I was even more confused about a week later when they started calling me William. I didn't know where William came from because I didn't know Bill came from William. So all these things, if we were to do that today, I think you'd have a backlash. But back then, it was very much accepted. That was the type of thing that you would be faced with. We had our home egged often. We would have go home Hindu Paki painted on the side of the house. And we would get names called at us going from school. So it was just something that it was an interesting time. It was the Charter of Rights and certainly multiculturalism itself, and I can certainly understand why Premier Trudeau back then, Justin's father, put in multiculturalism, because I think as it was without that type of national level sort of marketing and campaigning and branding, I don't know if we would have made the kind of strides that we have. It's not perfect, believe you. There are things that I wish we could have done differently, but it was something.
For sure. So along with that, we still have a really large number of immigrants that come in today. Like, Canada's very much known for that. So based on your experience, would you have any advice to offer someone that's struggling with their identity as a visible minority or just with facing adversity in like their day-to-day lives?
Yeah, and this has got really nothing, and I suspect, and I want to make sure and acknowledge the fact that those who are from a racialized community and visibly identifiable potentially are more, challenged and are, face more adversity at times. But you don't need to do that. You don't need to allow that to happen. We can change that to make it work for us. So I think anyone that is from a racialized community needs to leverage their identity rather than in any shape, way, or form consider that as a handicap. It's your mindset at the end of the day. You can either connect and relate with your identity and completely invest in understanding what that is and bring all those pieces and elements that shape your identity and the community that you are from to bear into the work and the career that you are going to enter into, and use that as leverage and a way to give you more credibility and give you enhanced skills and abilities. Diversity is a very commonly used term these days in boardrooms, in decision-making plans, in strategies, and so on and so forth. So if there is no better time to be different.
Yeah.
There's no better time to have mocha colored skin. So, so take advantage of the fact that you are different and be thankful that you come from a rich culture that has so many things within it that could teach another a different way of looking or bring a new perspective to a problem or an issue. That is the value of diversity. That is the the strength of diversity, and that only is going to be yours if you embrace your identity first. So stop trying to be somebody else. Be who you are. Find your strengths. Work on your weaknesses, and stand tall. If you've got that, then you will shine in any boardroom. If you are embarrassed, if you are not strong and not relating to yourself in that way, you have lost before you walk into any boardroom, any job, any kind of interview, any place. You've lost already. So I had to make that decision. When the RCMP came to me and said, well, we'd like to offer you a job, but tell you what, we don't have a uniform for you, so would you kindly remove your turban, shave your beard, cut your hair, and come on to the job? Well, I had to make a decision back then. I mean, it was a split-second decision, but reflecting on it, I had to make a decision. The decision was, do I change myself